And we're back. Now it's time to go from making one note to making at least 5. So what we're shooting for is a minor pentatonic scale. Not this key, but this flute. So this small flute happens to be roughly starting on a C. This flute we just made starting on approximately an E. This is an app called Tune It, which I really like. You can also use small guitar tuners or pretty much anything. Or you can play a piano and tune it to that, or you can play a note and make it sound good, if you have ear for that. So that number's plus, which means it was E, but it was sharp. I think I want to make this in the key of F. It's much easier to make it a little higher, which means I need to either shorten it or put a tuning hole in it. I'll show you how to put a tuning hole in. A little more reversible than shortening it. So the length and the diameter change the tune. And if I wanted to make finger holes, I would put them up high and make them fairly large. Tuning hole, or one or more, I'm going to start on the back and I'm going to put it right down near the bottom. You could carve these, you could drill these, depending on the material. I like burning them. You can use just a nail and pliers. You can use a rod and put it in a campfire. You can do a lot of things. Soldering iron is quite convenient for this. So I'm going to start by putting a tuning hole here. No particular science to where this goes, but always start small. Didn't change much. That was an E plus 33. Always make sure the smoke's out before you try tuning it. That's up some. And the larger I make this hole, or if I had made the hole further up, the higher the pitch will get. I'm not actually sawing with this, I'm just moving it in and out to keep a hot spot on the flute. So it's gone from a sharp E to a flat F. Borderline. So I could continue to make this bigger, or I could put in more holes. I think I'm going to put in what they call 4-direction holes. The 4 directions are part of the culture of a lot of Native American tribes. They are have religious significance. So a lot of flutes have a series of 4 holes around the bottom. And hopefully I'm not making these too big or too many. But again, I am starting small with them. A little better. It's now a less flat F. Tuning is an exercise in patience, because if you go too far, too fast, I'm tempted to make all 3 the same size, but I'm going to wait. Go too far too fast, it's hard to make the hole smaller. It is possible with some careful application of super glue. With any luck, I won't have to show that to you today. And the tuning will change from day to day, the level of moisture in the air, with the temperature of the air. So I wouldn't worry too much about getting it precise unless you're planning on playing with concert-tuned instruments or trying to make matching flutes. It also changes pitch depending on how hard you blow. I'm going to tweak this just a little more and then we'll move on to the finger holes. And as this is in the hole, I'm just moving it around, in and out a little bit, trying to keep the hole relatively round. Holes don't have to be round to work, but they look better, in my opinion. Alright, I can bring that sharper later if I want to, so I'm going to move on to the sound holes, or the finger holes. Not a precise science, because the pitch and the location of the holes will depend on the diameter and the length, to some extent on the material and the thickness. But let's take a shot at starting with some measurements. So from these tuning holes are a little lower. This is 17.5 inches from the sound hole to near the bottom. If I didn't have tuning holes or direction holes, it would be all the way to the bottom. And this is an F. In Charlie's book, he has a whole bunch. Again, this is the Art of Native American Flute Making, great book. Has a whole bunch of different flute sizes, tunings, and dimensions. These are a guideline. If you have precisely this starting inside diameter and hole diameter, these should work quite nicely. In my case, the inside diameter of the flute varies some, because it's a little tapered, but it's at most roughly 7/8 of an inch, little more, a little less, depending on which way I turn it. So it's 17.5, 7/8-ish. So it should be something like this flute. But you notice this is an E, mine's tuned to an F, so obviously something is different. But let's take a shot at using these measurements. So the first hole from the bottom, always work up from the bottom, is 11 1/8. I'm just going to call it 11 because I'm not precisely matching it anyway. 11 inches from the sound hole. Usually I just go by feel. I haven't made one this particular size before, so we'll see how this goes. So 11, that's way up here. I'd like to make the holes in line with the sound hole. This bamboo has nice little lines on it. Makes it a little bit easier to line things up. I just kind of trace with my finger. I've now forgotten where 11 inches is. I was pretty close. Okay, right about there. In this case, since I've used a tape measure, I'm going to make a little mark. And I'm going to burn through. The smaller the hole, the less it will affect the tone. The bigger the hole, the more it will affect the tone and make it go higher. It's actually pretty close to the note I want, but the hole is much smaller than I want. If the hole's too small, it doesn't make a clean sound. Which means to make that note, I need to move down further. So let's see. Here's the scales. They all have the same intervals, but they start in different notes, so you don't have to figure it out. So this is starting on an F, so the next one I'm looking for is a G sharp. G sharp is the same thing as an A flat, but I want a bigger hole. So instead of using this and keeping that size, I'm going to put a hole in lower and make it bigger. And I'm going to choose to make these where they're comfortable for my fingers. So I'm going to put the next one down here. On bigger flutes, you're going to have to stretch it a bit more. Comfortable for your fingers will depend on how big your hands are, how flexible they are. Okay, so if I have a hole here, it's going to need to be bigger. Notes, but not the notes I want. So remember that low note I want to be a G sharp or an A flat. And since my low note, the F, is a little flat, my F and my A flat are about the same amount off. The interval is good. So I'm going to stick with that. If I want to bring the whole thing up, I'll make my sound holes a little bigger, shorten it some, and make each of the holes bigger, bring the whole scale up. But we're starting with that nice interval, so let's move on to the next note. I got pretty lucky with that one. So key of F. F, G sharp, A sharp. A sharp is also B flat. That's clearly not right, since the intervals I'm looking for are so we'll make this next hole a little bigger. And remember, as you're moving up the scale, you leave the lowered holes open. That's a sharp A, but I'm looking for a B flat, so it still has to get bigger. And if you're making the hole bigger, and it's a little off-center, this one's pretty good. But if you're going to make it bigger anyway, you can sort of preferentially burn it open or carve it open on one side, so you can bring it back centered. Or you can move it up and down just a little bit as you make the hole bigger. That's a B flat, but if I'm tuning intervals, then that should be about a -30. So I need to make this hole a little bit bigger. Like I said, it's a practice of sneaking up on them. And be careful, sometimes the holes are quite hot. Alright. The next note, so F, G sharp, which is A flat, A sharp, which is B flat, C is the next one I'm looking for. And again, I'm just going to pick a place for the hole that's comfortable for my fingers, which is about here, and burn through again. nice bluesy, but not the note I'm looking for, the Native American pentatonic scale, minor pentatonic scale. So let's bring that up. This is actually quite a lot of fun to play blues on one of these flutes, and it's quite easy as well. Quite a lot bigger. And this is already about the same size. It can get as big as I want as long as my finger can still cover it. But it's still quite a ways off. So I'm going to actually try to move this up a little bit as I burn it, so that also will raise the pitch. So I'm going to work just on the top half here on this side to make it bigger. Remember, keep stopping and checking. Closer. Quite a sharp B, but it's not a C yet. So we're going to keep going bigger. I'm up to a flat C. That's actually pretty close now. A little bit bigger yet. It's important that you blow with the same amount of pressure as you're doing this, otherwise you're going to be affecting the pitch by blowing different amounts. And if you blow too hard, it's going to sound sharp, and later you're going to go back and it's going to sound flat again. And that's actually kind of a little hot on the inside, so we'll scrape that part out. Alright, we've got the bottom 3 notes, bottom 4. And the next note we need in the F minor pentatonic scale is a D sharp, or an E flat. It's usually a bit more of a break, a little more space between the next 2 holes. So I'm going to try putting it about there. I could be going by the measurements, I suppose, but that first one didn't work out so well, considering that I have a variable diameter flute. And Charlie, if you see this and I'm doing something wrong with your measurements, please let me know. Or if anyone else has any ideas. Nope. Definitely not what I'm going for, which is good because I wouldn't want to have a hole that small. We're going for an E flat, since my tuner tends to be reading in flats at the moment. flat D needs to come up quite a bit. The only time you'll get this right on the first try is well, I suppose two, if you're amazingly lucky, or if you're making identical flutes over and over again, which I don't do, so. Bigger yet. I kind of like my holes bigger than some. Not particularly sure why. But to get the same note, same effect, you can have a larger hole down lower or a smaller hole up higher. If I was going to do this one over again, I probably would have put the first hole lower and made it bigger. Now it's a sharp D, but I'm looking for an E flat. And this one may be getting bigger than I want it to. But hey, it's always an experiment. It will work. And if it ends up completely wrong, you can either start over, because the material's free, or you can plug the hole and make a hole higher up. Okay, definitely getting pretty big. But like I said, I like the holes big. If I blow really hard, I can make it sharp enough. Unfortunately, the larger they are, the less sensitive it is to hole size. Almost there. It's also getting kind of not round, so let's see if I can fix that up. Since the wall thickness varies, sometimes you'll find one place burns faster than others, which tends to make it get all wonky and not round. There we go. If I had little fingers, that would be a hole that's too big, but works for me. And since I know that one was pretty big, which means it was kind of too low, I think I'm going to push the other one up a little higher than I normally would. Put it up here. I'm at the top of the octave now, so I'm looking for the same note we started on. So I'm looking for an F again. recall if I shared my favorite quote earlier in this video, but just in case, I'll do it again. My current favorite quote, one that I talk to kids about all the time. That was pretty close. It's by Henry Ford, and he said something like, "Whether you believe you can do a thing or not, you are correct." And what that says to me is, start out assuming you can do something, keep trying if you have to, and you will get it eventually, if not sooner. Remember I said you could play a blues scale? So there you have it. I may go back and change some things a little bit, maybe tune it a little bit higher, maybe actually plug that hole. One way to deal with holes like that is to take a bead or a piece of stone, or I suppose I could actually cover it if I wanted to, if I was really in dire straits. But I usually try to make it look like it was on purpose decorative. I'll also tell you, if you make the hole bigger, or make a hole too big, one way to fix it up, which I don't have to do right now, is to put a bead of thick super glue, just kind of a little drop along the edge. You don't have to close it all at once. Give it a spritz with the super glue accelerant. Check it, build it up just a little more, and it's relatively easy to fill in some holes. So, when in doubt, see if you can fix it. If you can't, start over. You only have an hour or so invested in this, and some free material, hopefully. Alright, thanks for watching.